Hello, everyone. Welcome to Royally Unfiltered, the show that takes you behind palace gates like never before. This is where tradition meets truth and nothing is off limits. This week, helping me tackle all the biggest headlines is PR expert and royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams and former press secretary to the late Queen Elizabeth II and King Charles III, Dickie Arbiter. Thank you so much for being here. I am surprised at what a busy week we had, Dickie, when it came to all of the working royals, the Princess of Wales and Prince William. And I was thrilled to see King Charles and Camilla. I have to ask, did you see the headline circulating about poor Catherine? I think organically and sweetly suggesting sharing her jam resume for free, and the avalanche of headlines about Meghan versus Catherine. I'd love to know if you saw it and what your opinions are about, if you thought that that was intentional or as innocent as I think it was.
Nothing is intentional when it comes to the Princess of Wales. She was probably making very polite conversation. Kids were talking about how they pick plums and they make jam, and she just said, well, I've got a jam recipe and I'll send it to you. Simple as that.
Yeah.
You know, the headline writers, they love mixing it up. They love writing headlines because, you know, the bigger the headline, the more salacious the headline, the bigger the publicity. And in terms of newspapers, the bigger the sales of newspapers. It's just a passing remark by the Princess of Wales. You know, if it comes to that, both of them will end up not being able to say anything in case the headline writers make a big deal of it. It's not a big deal. The lady is perfectly innocent. She makes jam. She cooks at home. She probably cooks a lot more than Mrs. Sussex does in California. But no, I think a very harmless remark, and I'm sure Richard will agree with me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Richard, Catherine, and Prince William met young volunteers at Meadow Street Community Garden, and they were in Wales. It was the sweetest engagement because we saw some hand holding, and then it was also fun to see them engaging in this royal engagement together, teasing one another. Prince William beating Princess Catherine when it came to putting something together in the kitchen. It's nice to see them together. Don't you agree that it's kind of, I mean, very pleasant to see them interacting and back on the scene together, even if only temporarily?
Oh, absolutely. And of course, you mentioned a charming little bit of rivalry. I mean, they used to exploit that with dragon boat races and with archery and, you know, a lot of fun when they were on tours abroad. And I hope that will be in the not too distant future. But yes, I totally agree with Dickie. I mean, that isn't a story. It's a crazed piece of lunacy made up into a story. I really, really think it's beneath taste. But it's so obviously so silly. But yes, absolutely wonderful to see them and together. And again, of course, very significant with St. David's Day and the Prince and Princess of Wales and the Welsh Guards. There'll be a traditional tribute there and so forth. I mean, I think it's delightful. And yes, the royals hit the kitchens is a good headline, but I think that's where it should be left.
Now, Dickie, I saw here in the States a kind of, I don't know how to, well, I'll just say Us Weekly did a story, and it was with a royal photographer who said that he felt like the Prince and Princess of Wales are more comfortable showing public displays of affection today because of this standard reset or set by the Sussexes, which surprised me because I feel like I've been watching these two flirt with each other for 20 years. You have known them for longer than that. Talk to me about how they've engaged with each other publicly, because I've always felt like there's been flirtatious whispers. We've seen Catherine tap his behind. I think that was at a BAFTA award show. I feel like I've always seen them engage with each other in a romantic way. Of course, they behave themselves when they're in a situation where they need to have a certain posture. But when it is okay to be playful, I feel like I see them being very playful.
You do see them being very playful, and I think in terms of a photographer, the alleged story is just making a little bit of mischief. They do, as Richard says, they do compete each other when it comes to dragon boats and archery and what have you. But at the end of the day, they are a married couple. They've been married since 2011. They do love each other. And let's not forget, they went through a horrendous year last year with Catherine's cancer, with the treatment that she had, and William having to not just shoulder the burden of the family, and he adores his family, but also having to undertake his full role as a member of the royal family and in support of his dad, the king. So it's been a tough year. And so what if they show a bit of tactile togetherness in public? They were seen holding hands. So what? So often, William or Catherine or both of them, they'll put a comforting hand on each other's back. It's nothing new, but Catherine has been out of the loop for so long that all of a sudden they're seeing this as something that never happened before. It has happened before, but because she's been out of the loop and because of this horrendous year, it just seems a lot more appropriate and a lot more loving. But they're adoring couple of each other. They adore each other, they adore their family, they adore the rest of the royal family, and they enjoy doing the work that they do on behalf of the royal family. So let's not, sort of look at things that aren't there.
Yes.
They've always shown affection. They've always been tactile in public, probably not as much as more recently, but it harks back to last year, a year both of them would rather forget.
Can I ask you a very tacky question that you're going to probably if you're going to scold me on? Do you think that, and I'm talking from your experience, did you ever see, and this is just a Princess Diana fan, curious?
Yes, I did.
Did you see Diana and Charles behave in such a way?
I did. There were times in Australia when Diana was feeling the heat and feeling the pressure, because there were tens of thousands of people there, and he put an affectionate hand on her hand to comfort her, put a hand on her back. I remember I was still a reporter in those days when the King, as Prince of Wales, introduced his wife to the people of Wales. This was in October 1981. And shortly after that, the announcement came that she was pregnant with William. But they got out of the car and they were deciding who was going to go which side of the road. And the King, Charles, grabbed her bottom and squeezed it. Yeah, so it has happened before. It's nothing new. But, the people on the road today, they weren't around when Charles and Diana were first married. They weren't around when Charles and Diana were on the road. So they're looking at that relationship through what other people have written, through what they've read, through what they've read in books. A lot of it is rubbish, but it sells books. Rubbish sells books, salaciousness sells books, sensationalism sells books and newspapers. But yeah, Charles and Diana did, and they were tactile with each other.
Oh my goodness. Well, that did make my heart just grow 3 times its normal size. All right, Richard.
You didn't even have to fully answer the question.
I know, you knew exactly. You're just that good, Dickie. All right. So Richard, we mentioned the kitchen earlier, but there was this adorable moment in the kitchen. They're in Wales and they're at the Welsh cake shop and they're learning how to make Welsh cakes with the owner, Teresa Connor. And she shows them how to make these tasty pastries on this cast iron stovetop, and Prince William jokes, "You'll have to sell these for half price." Now, we have these moments from Prince William all the time, and I feel like for the last few years, because of some of the drama, not only the drama but deaths in the family, severe deaths and sickness and illness, we haven't really seen much of this from him. If you are an American that just tuned in after Megxit because of the kind of the soap opera surrounding the Sussexes, is this who Prince William truly is? This sweet, funny, witty man? I feel like in the States, he has, and it's likely on purpose, been painted as the guy that's breaking the dog bowl, ripping the necklace, a tough guy. Who is Prince William?
Well, firstly, I think I was very pleased at this. This was last year's poll. It showed that people in the States overall, if YouGov is to be believed, think that, well, he was voted #1 in the world. It was just above President Zelensky, who we, I think, feel for now in a totally different way. But that does seem to indicate that he has got a very pleasing image across. I mean, an image in several directions, because firstly, I mean, as Dickie was saying, there is the very, very loving, close relationship with Catherine. I mean, the shot of them, for example, holding hands, I mean, it's rather delightful, but that has to be news. I agree with Dickie. I mean, I saw various bits of it and there were headlines and so forth, as though this was something extraordinary, as though there's something had to be commented on, as though this was something that, to quote phrase, broke royal protocol, as the Queen famously said to Michelle Obama, royal protocol is rubbish. And I mean, obviously, it just showed their closeness. But what William is, I think, there's several aspects to him. Firstly, obviously, I think very significantly today, I think he's got a reputation as a bit of a diplomat, and rather good in that respect, because I mean, he had the visit to China with President Xi and the attempt, which I think was rather successful, against the illegal wildlife trade. And then subsequently, of course, he was the first royal to have an official visit to Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, and that went extremely well. And he's handled Earthshot so well in various parts of the world. So I think that is an aspect to him that's very significant too. And then on top of that, of course, trips abroad, trips with Catherine, and also, of course, very, very significantly, a family man, and bearing, as Dickie was saying, the most dreadful burdens, partly in the public eye, someone who's always determined to put his family first. And we saw this in Wales, we saw this subsequently in East Anglia, and then we saw this subsequently when they did full-time royal engagements. And I mean, it's just been so successful, and he's handled it, I think, so well. The one thing also very significant too, I think, that he has taken on, as Catherine has, far fewer patronages, but done a great deal more, I think, for the ones that he's done. He's attached to homelessness, Earthshot Prize, mental health, and so on. So there's a very good balance there, and it would have to be an American who had a very jaundiced point of view, didn't appreciate some of that, because I do think overall they've got the message across pretty well. And the horrors of the last year and the pressures there, and remembering it began with a serious abdominal operation for Catherine. And we also saw, and I think this needs a mention, because in September, with the very, very intimate shots in that video message where Catherine told us that she was cancer-free and had finished chemotherapy. So I think you've got the elements, to quote Shakespeare, well mixed in him. I really think that the handling of that overall, I think he's done extremely well. And I think also he has the role to play as the royal family, in my opinion, gear up for a particularly significant role when it comes to the transatlantic relationship with the United States.
But I just make a point here, Kinsey. Let's not forget that William was the first royal to meet President Trump. And they seem to, by all accounts, have a very good relationship. I think one of the problems in your side of the pond is that people take too much note of social media. Yes. And social media is a cesspit.
Yes.
So, you believe that, you believe anything.
That is the truth. All right, Dickie, while I've got you, let's talk about King Charles and Queen Camilla this week, because on Wednesday, they spent the day visiting local Muslim communities in London ahead of Ramadan. And they were so sweet and fun. And we talk about rivalries with Prince William and Catherine, but it was so fun to see the king and queen at this one restaurant. The owner's name is Asma Khan, and they helped pack dates to be sent to local hospitals. The dried fruit is traditionally eaten to break the holiday fast.
And the king was particularly fast at it too.
Oh my goodness! I mean, I'm continuously surprised by King Charles. This is a man that we know is undergoing regular treatment for cancer. The mental toll that must take on you and physical toll. And I never see this man without a smile on his face. I never see this man not eager to be where he's at. Dickie, talk to me about the character of King Charles and kind of the joy we see within him today.
Well, he's doing today as king what he did as the Prince of Wales. I was his press secretary at the time that he was married to Diana. He's very much a people person and he wants to be involved. And he was involved with young people through his Prince's Trust, tremendous relationship with young people. And today he is king of the United Kingdom. And as such, United Kingdom is a diverse community. He feels that he wants to bring everybody together. Ramadan coming up. Ramadan is a very holy occasion for Muslims, and therefore, yes, he wanted to be there with them and celebrate with them. He's not a sort of one race, a one ethnic group person. He is king of the United Kingdom, and he will play that role to his utmost. It's quite interesting you brought that up because I was surfing the cesspit. I think they call it X now, don't they? And there's one person on it really had a go at the king for what he did at that particular visit. It sort of, she almost said he demeaned himself. Well, he didn't demean himself. He got involved with the community. There was something to be done, and he didn't take his jacket off, but he metaphorically rolled his sleeves up and got on with the job, as did Queen Camilla. So he is a king of the United Kingdom. He works tirelessly for the United Kingdom, as he does as head of the Commonwealth. And he's just segued from Prince of Wales into king, doing the same job, doing it probably, I would say, a little bit better, because as Prince of Wales, he could say things that he can't say as monarch, because constitutionally he's not allowed to. But he is a very good man. He does, people say, wear his heart on his sleeve. But everywhere he goes, people turn out to see him. And as you rightly said, he's always got a smile on his face. He's still undergoing treatment for cancer, but he's got a smile on his face. And he's got the woman he loves alongside him. And he can't fail. And as far as the people are concerned, they love him. That's it.
Absolutely. I know. It brings a smile to my face. All right. So this next story, I want both of you, I'd love both of your opinions on, because I thought that this 60 Minutes Australia interview was absolutely fascinating and very well done. Richard, A, I'd like to know if you caught the entire thing, and B, I'd like to know, what was your opinion on the way Jason Knauf, from a PR perspective, handled the questions lobbed at him about the Sussexes? I kind of wonder if they had to ask his permission before they asked him any questions about the Sussexes, because that was a really good get, that interview, to the point where I would say, I'll do whatever you want. And I'd also just like to know, watching it, did you think that he handled it with care? Because I felt like he has a really great posture.
Well, so far as watching is concerned, I had a problem because I was trying to get it, and apparently it, at least where I was looking, it said it wasn't available.
I'm going to send it. I'm going to send you a link. I'll send you a link.
But I saw a lot of, obviously, of the comments and the quotes and so forth. And regarding the Sussexes, well, of course, it was so reasonable. It was so well balanced. It was, after all, he wished them well, and he talked generally about experience. And naturally, there was a good deal about the ferocity of working in the public eye and what the toll that could take, human moments, and for example, Charlotte's birth and what nearly happened. Anyone can drop something in the street and so forth. All very clever. He knew perfectly well, of course, that the interest would be focused most specifically on the bullying allegations, which had appeared in the Times of Valentine Lowe just before the Oprah interview. And he knew perfectly well that when he said that he regretted nothing, or words to that effect, he knew that that would be taken as affirming that he didn't disprove of the fact that the leaked email to Simon Case was in fact revealing to the world that two members of staff that had to leave because of Meghan's, shall we say, activities. She strongly denied it. And of course, this has remained controversial. But of course, the interesting aspect of this is that it has come up. And it's been, well, firstly, the Hollywood Reporter, of course, talked about a dictator in high heels quite recently. Then, of course, we've had Vanity Fair, and that has, and I think the Sussexes will be grieved about this because they couldn't really respond to Vanity Fair. I noticed there was a source which found it, I quote, distressing, but very, very clearly, those allegations will not go away. Now, of course, I recognize that a year later or so, the palace buried the report, and we'll never know what was actually in it or what was actually discovered. But deny it though she may, I think that so far as Meghan's concerned, the fact that these bullying allegations keep coming up in one form or another, and these were in the days where, in point of fact, in Oprah, the Sussexes were claiming that they themselves were victim of something not dissimilar by the royal family. In
projection. Now that I know better, I say that was a projection, or,
Well, one remembers that so far as Harry and Meghan are concerned, I think I don't know the exact length of time, perhaps 14 months ago or perhaps slightly more. And when Spare came out, they wanted an apology from the royal family to how they were treated. Now, so listening to or reading about Jason Knauf and what he was saying, I think it brought back memories that the Sussexes would dearly love to have forgotten, but equally in the context of the way he handled it, I think he handled it very well because he wished them well and he went through circumlocutory pleasantries which appeared to be sympathetic towards them, but in reality people will remember. And also, of course, we remember that we only discovered, it was perfectly obvious to anyone who read Finding Freedom, that the Sussexes had collaborated. I mean, there was a clue in the actual index of the book, but they denied it. And Meghan, of course, in the Mail on Sunday case, had to apologize to the court because she'd forgotten. Very, very regrettable. It was Jason Knauf who was, of course, responsible.
And he was so kind about them, and we saw Meghan almost irate in the Netflix series because Prince William gave Jason permission, allegedly, according to Meghan, to reveal that information. And you really saw Meghan irate over this individual. So he had been cast as a villain by a certain side of, as Dickie astutely points out, the internet, the social media. And so to see him be so kind and gracious was, it made him look like the bigger person above the fray, which I really liked. Dickie, this is your wheelhouse. I have to ask you, this is a man that still works with Prince William under the Earthshot umbrella. Surely he had Prince William's permission to give this interview. And that would be a difficult situation, knowing that you're going to be asked about the Sussexes.
Well, he would have been given permission to do the interview. You've got to remember that he's no longer employed by the royal household, so he knows what to say and what not to say. What is quite interesting, that right at the end of that 60 minutes, and I did watch all of it, was that he wouldn't have changed anything.
Yeah.
Because that's what he was asked. What was quite interesting is that I give talks on cruise ships. I give talks around the United Kingdom.
Dickie, you've got to invite me on your next cruise. I'm going. I'll be there.
And when hang on, and when it comes to questions, I always say I'll always give an answer. Might not be the answer you want, but you'll always get an answer. There's no such thing as no comment, because it just doesn't exist. And Jason would have said to 60 Minutes, look, ask me anything. It might not be the answer you expect or the answer you want, but I will answer anything. And he did answer everything. He was very diplomatic, given the position that he has with Earthshot. But I thought he acquitted himself very well. But look, come on, he's a professional. And he knows exactly what to do, how to do it, the sort of questions that are going to come. And he'll be prepared in his head. He might not have sat down weeks beforehand and worked out, but he's that sort of person that can think off the top of his head and come out with an answer that would be perfectly acceptable. But at the end of the day, I think it was very telling that he said he wouldn't change anything. So he obviously feels, and I think personally, that he did get everything right. And in answer to your question, yeah, he wouldn't have gone ahead and done it without giving the heads up to the Prince of Wales.
Now, I might be a silly question, and Dickie, I'll stay with you because I'm about to bounce to Richard for some PR expertise. But Dickie, do you think that there's anything odd about the timing of this piece? I mean, maybe the palace couldn't control it. Maybe they wouldn't want to control it, but Meghan Markle is desperately trying to build hype for a new television show. We've talked about these bullying allegations. They talk about these bullying allegations on a 60 Minutes interview. Meghan releases a silly blooper reel where she's hugging staff members and she's giggling with behind the scenes crew.
Yeah.
Within instantly, Meghan releases this video where she's thanking her crew so much for all their hard work because the countdown is on.
The soap actress going over the top.
Exactly. So do you think that there was any timing when it comes to the palace? Typically you give me this answer. She is not on their radar. And I love that about you. And I'm hoping that you're going to give me a similar answer today. But I did think it was interesting that such a powerful piece to me comes out in the lead up to Meghan Markle's new show.
Look, Jason was in Australia. Australia wanted an interview, Channel 9, and they got their interview. The palace are not going to dictate. Jason doesn't work for the palace. He works for Prince William's Earthshot. So it would have been no contest. Channel 9 wanted to run the interview. They wanted to do the interview. He said yes. They wanted to run the interview as part of their 60 Minutes series, and they ran it. So there would have been no interference from anybody as to when it runs, given that Mrs. Sussex has got her Netflix series coming up. That's something else to behold. Next week, I think, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well, let's talk to Richard about that. Richard, you released a really interesting YouTube video where you just slam the As Ever brand. Big reveal, I guess. I don't know how. To me, it was like a crisis pivot. Well, clearly, American Riviera Orchard's not going to be ready to go. So what do we have in our back pocket? As ever. So talk to me about. There are the brand launch and Meghan's show launch. There is an authenticity, sincerity, and lack of identity issue here when it comes to Meghan Markle trying to convince the world not only to buy whatever products are ever available on As Ever, but to buy into her TV show that we expect Netflix just to dump all eight episodes next Tuesday.
Yes, that is 4 hours. I think each episode is half an hour. So that will occupy the fans, but how many others will stay the distance? I mean, that, of course, is another issue. It's absolutely pivotal, of course, because we knew Polo wouldn't succeed, at least significantly. I mean, it was so obvious because it was such a elitist sport. And we also know that, well, Heart of Invictus, it's a very worthy story. So people didn't stay with it because of the length. And I mean, no other project seems to me to be coming to fruition, and therefore it's absolutely pivotal. And she's managed to get Netflix with stocking these products where it's in the shopping malls, which is going to be quite interesting in Philadelphia and in Dallas.
No, they've said, Page Six recently reported that her products are not going to be available till months after the show airs, and that they've pulled the products because they're not going to be available, according to Page Six, from the Dallas and Philadelphia malls because she's just not ready. I mean, I don't think I'm shocking you. And I'm surprised that I continue to be shocked by their lack of preparation. But that's the latest here in the States, is that she does not have the product ready to even go in the malls.
Then one wonders why this is then, you could use the word incompetence because it is ridiculous. I mean, you have American Riviera Orchard, I think it was last March, and then the trademark issues, and of course the American Riviera, and you can't trademark part of the United States and so forth. And she apparently didn't know this, or at least didn't, or doesn't seem to have handled it in any way other than the grossest of incompetence. Because yes, you get as ever, but also then you get the problem with the logo and the town of Pereiras. There's the coat of arms, and so they complain, and that gives a certain show to publicity. And also then you discover, as ever, is a clothing store which hasn't trademarked it, but it's in New York. It'll give the store a bit of publicity, but the impression you've got is someone who's adrift, that there really isn't the coherence in the planning. I mean, Netflix did have the head of content, said some nice things about it. We'll see whether that translates, of course, in the autumn when that contract of $100 million expires, and what, if anything, takes its place. They might allow some form of face-saving arrangement, because I don't think they're going to want to completely dump them. I mean, one bears in mind that when the contract was began, the Crown was one of Netflix's jewels that was screening, and of course it made sense to have two royals when you're having a show which, in a bizarre way, changed course in my view and became, I'm sure Dickie will agree, something that would knock the royal family in a way that was absolutely deplorable. And certainly you wouldn't see some of it again with the portrayal of Mr. Al-Fayed as a rather jolly foreigner who was discriminated against. The whole thing, if you look at it again, it made sense from Netflix's point of view at that time, perhaps. But look at the way Harry and Meghan have handled things. And I mean, it's a vacuum. If the cookery, it may in fact be, there were reports you will have seen, of course, that in the interim, when this was postponed because of the wildfires for a few weeks, they may well have added extra bits. And will we see them as, I quote, disaster tourists, or whatever critics called them? Will we actually see some additions, something that clearly has been added? So it's going to be absolutely fascinating. But if it flops, or if the fans love it but no one else, or very few others, I mean, who's it aiming at? Stay-at-home moms, for example. America's changed somewhat, not only the disastrous wildfires, but of course you have President Trump and a very different world order that seems to be coming to the fore. So one wonders, is as ever, well, as ever was the way I used to sign off letters. Now, is she going to be signed off by Netflix? We wait and see. All 8 episodes.
A very good point. All right, Dickie, I have one last question for you, and feel free to comment on what Richard said if you feel compelled to. But there are also stories circulating here that Meghan was dropped by her agency, William Morris Endeavor, one of Hollywood's top talent agents and agencies. I know you've probably worked with agents before in some capacity for the palace. You probably almost worked as one. You're handling crisis, after crisis. You're crafting communication when it comes to you're building a brand. Talk to me about the story specifically is that Meghan could still be working with them under the capacity of Archewell, but when it comes to her personal brand, Page Six reports that in January of 2024, right around the holidays, she had a meeting and she demanded a meeting, according to Page Six, and expected decks and plans when it comes to the build out of her show, allegedly, and pitched a fit when that wasn't done. And Ari Emanuel, who I'm sure you've heard of, he was the person that they built the character around, Jeremy Piven's character around on the television show Entourage. He's such a tough Hollywood agent. He's like notorious. He said that, or they said that Ari was absolutely done with her after she pitched this fit in January of 2024, referring to her as too demanding and difficult to work with.
Sounds like Spotify again.
Yeah, exactly. So if you were in the position of being Meghan's PR person or being Meghan's agent, how would you deal with somebody like that? Do you put on your kid gloves because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, or is life too short? Which is also something people have said. Life is too short to work with the Sussexes.
Life is far too short to have hassles. Why should you make yourself ill because two people are being so incredibly stupid? Um, my guess is that the agent wanted to jump ship before it got too impossible to jump ship. We've seen failure after failure. Invictus bombed, Polo bombed. What this is going to do remains to be seen. Yeah, there is a nucleus of a fan base, but the fan base doesn't make up a global populist program, and it remains to be seen. I personally don't believe Netflix will renew. What have they got out of this 5-year deal? A lot of money spent, not a lot of return. I mean, that 6-part series of Harry and Meghan, a lot of people liked it, but it really bombed at the end of the day, because one thing they mocked, and she mocked, was the late Queen. And nobody accepts that whatsoever. They're not getting a good return for their money. It's been going downhill since the beginning. Yeah, it sort of kicked off with the Oprah Winfrey interview, but that proved to be a lie. Things mentioned in that weren't mentioned in the book. So you have to ask yourself, well, why not? So I can't see Netflix being renewed. And as far as the agency are concerned, they jumped ship before they were pushed.
Wow. Well, I have to ask Dickie, are you gonna put your seatbelt on and watch With Love, Meghan?
Oh, I'll watch it. I watch it. I mean, I watched all The Crown. I watched all Polo. I binged. I did it all in one day, because that goes with the territory. That's part of the job.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. But I might put some of the programs on fast forward, so as not to be bored by the whole thing. But at the end of the day, you've got to cut the rough with the smooth. And if you're going to talk about it, you've got to know what you're talking about and watch it.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, I look forward to talking to you both afterwards and getting reaction. Agree with us, disagree with us. Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this fun little interactive chat with all of your friends. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams and former press secretary to the late Queen Elizabeth II and King Charles III, Dickie Arbiter, thank you for your excellent insight today. And what a fun conversation. Thank you so much for being here.